beloved Nelson Mandela. Today you will hear and will have heard statements and arguments, some of which will consist of apportioning blame, some of which will bring plans, some will look to changing the way things work, and some will be self-serving. Unfortunately, not all will be well-intentioned, but will seek to further the goals of certain interests. What we need to do here today is to put all of that aside and to understand what it is that has been created and to dismantle it, replacing it with a plan that has at its center, its core, the welfare of South Africa's 2 rhino species. This plan is drastic, but then again what we are facing is something that in itself is drastic. So to begin, we need to dispel the myth that some will attempt to promote that by killing our rhinos and creating a legal market for their body parts, specifically their horns, we are in fact contributing to their well-being. Any student of the English language will agree that this is an oxymoron of large proportion. We have to take what we have, this market, and understand it, not in animal or conservation terms, but in pure cold economics. Not having enough time allocated to explore this notion to debunk what has become known as rhino economics, in simple terms, the hunters and poachers have created the mechanism to grow the market. Whether by choice or happenstance, the effect of hunting and now poaching just grows that market. There are many instances in all sorts of fields and disciplines that are available to support this theory. With legal trade of rhino parts, the facts are there. Over the last few years, a market has been created legally or otherwise, which feeds the need for more and more supply. This supply, as we know, comes from 2 sources, the so-called legal hunters and the illegal poaching of these magnificent beasts. To stop this, we need to cut the supply off, and to do that, will take the redeployment of resources and in some cases a shift in understanding of just why it is we need to preserve and protect these animals. So to begin, we need to put into place a moratorium on all activities around rhinos, that we have no trade, no transport, no hunting, nothing that will affect the rhinos that we have in any way. This moratorium must be for at least 6 months, and during that period, a count of every single rhino in South Africa needs to be undertaken. We also need to understand that whatever rhino parts are stockpiled, no matter where, need to be accounted for. We need to have information that tells us accurately about the birth rate of these creatures, and should any rhino be shot during the moratorium without specific permission of the authorities, such action will be treated as poaching. Once the moratorium is in place, we need to enact a number of things that will by their very nature undermine the trade in rhino and their, if I can use the term, derivatives. The law around poaching needs to be tightened in that any suspect arrested under suspicion of poaching is denied the possibility of bail. Any person convicted of poaching must serve at least 75% of his or her sentence before they become eligible for an application for parole. If the person convicted is part of any law enforcement organization or is in any way connected to any veterinary service, they cannot be eligible for parole. Any person convicted of a poaching offence will immediately have his or her possessions seized by the asset forfeiture unit, and after conviction, those assets to be sold. Any pilot found to be participating or have participated in any activity related to poaching will immediately have his or her pilot's license cancelled, and the names will be forwarded to the International Civil Aviation Organization, and every country that is a signatory to ICAO will not allow that person to obtain a similar license in that country. Any rotorcraft that is transported anywhere in South Africa by road will be subject to a permit for transport issued by a magistrate. Similarly, any ZU-registered aircraft being transported by road be subjected to the same requirement. All farms in which rhino are found, including registered protected areas, will be registered with the South African Civil Aviation Authority and will be deemed restricted areas. And any aircraft, whether ZS or ZU registered, that will overfly those farms or areas will file a flight plan with full search and rescue. Any aircraft that does not comply will be subject to seizure by the asset forfeiture unit for sale. Pilots who do not comply will subject themselves to sanction as mentioned above. Aviation insurance companies will be lobbied not to cover aircraft that are lost if it is found that aircraft were not in compliance with overflight and poaching regulations. The control of veterinary medicines needs to be tightened up, and a proper register of all medicines sold to be kept by suppliers, a balancing register to be kept by veterinarians, and regular audit of same needs to be carried out. If it is found that medicine sold by and under the control of both the supplier and the veterinarian is used in a poaching occurrence, then both shall be guilty of an offence under the new poaching laws and subject to similar sanction. The courts also need to be expanded. It was a revelation how matters were handled during the World Cup. And also at holiday time each year, a similar regime needs to be put into place for this particular problem, with justice being carried out swiftly. Any person who knowingly sells a rhino to anyone who has been charged under the poaching laws will themselves be guilty of an offence under these laws. Any person who is under investigation or has been charged under a poaching law may not trade or participate in any activity that will involve any form of wildlife. Any license they have, including a firearm license, will immediately be suspended, and any weapon in their possession will have to be surrendered to the authorities. Failure to do so will constitute an offence. No conservation authority may trade with any person who is suspected of or who has been charged with any offence under the poaching laws. No person may purchase more than 5 rhino in any 12-month period. Should a person make such a purchase, it is incumbent on that person to look after and ensure the well-being of those animals for a period of not less than 24 months before an application for a hunting license for that specific animal may be applied for. Inside any protected area, should an animal have to be shot, will be subject to a proper investigation as to the reasons for the killing. For a hunting license to be approved, and specifically for a rhino, the conditions of such a license must be stringent and uniform. The applicant must...
3 more minutes.
Okay. We cannot have an army deployed all over Africa while our country is facing what can only be described as a low-intensity guerrilla war. It is incumbent on the South African National Defence Force to protect our borders and our installations, such as the Kruger National Park. In this regard, Sandparks needs to ensure the integrity of all the fencing. It is also incumbent on our citizens to expect a service from any and all of our authorities like SAPS, Sandparks, provincial conservation agencies, and so on, to have their property protected. The force inside the Kruger needs to be beefed up, and even more deployment needs to take place. And if every rhino needs to have a soldier standing next to it, that's what needs to happen until the scourge is properly and permanently eradicated. Our military has in the last years received some of the most sophisticated hardware available, yet we seem to have difficulty in deploying this equipment specifically. I refer here to the use of unmanned airborne vehicles, which are manufactured right here in South Africa. We have an Air Force base next to Kruger National Park, Hoedspruit. It's beyond me why these vehicles are not deployed daily. They are also mobile, allowing them to move to any area where rhino are kept. There's a simple way of finding out who's in the park, when and if they have permission. One wonders how the Chinese government would react if a sudden attack was made on its panda population, with their body parts ending up here in South Africa. So our government needs to engage robustly with that government about what is happening here. They also need to engage with other governments where it is suspected a market for rhino parts exists, and they need to carry the spectre of some sort of sanction should those governments not cooperate. To cover the obvious cost for this program, I would like to propose a rhino levy that will be collected in various ways. AXA has recently imposed a tariff increase arbitrarily, as they are participants in the large tourism market, as are our rhino. A 10 Rand rhino levy should be applied at all airports and added to all air tickets. Each person entering a government-owned and operated protected area should be subject to a 10 Rand rhino levy, and a 10 Rand rhino levy to be added to each night of accommodation spent in any government facility. There needs to be a central coordination of some kind regarding rhinos. There are literally hundreds of Facebook pages, websites, and small organizations, all trying to do what they believe in, mine being one small example. The central coordination desk will coordinate it all. Each group, whether it be WWF, EWT, or our own Rhino Guardians, will receive a registration number from that desk and will be then able to participate, make comment, and act in saving our rhinos. But at least we all will know where and how, why it's happening. Each week, each week, that desk should issue a report that will list all information from diplomatic exchanges with those countries previously mentioned to the publication of applications to hunt and when licenses are granted, the details of the hunter, the operator, and so on. All animal sales to be fully reported. The accounts of that desk must be open to the public. It is time that we went back to the reason that we conserve and get away from the notion that wildlife is just another commodity to trade and to make money off. It's time the public, through all of these groups, need to participate, to listen, to understand, and to be objective. It's time that the authorities work together with all interest groups to find resolution to the scourge. Thank you.